Blue Fugates. In 1820, deep in the hills of eastern Kentucky, there lived a family that didn't look like anyone else. They weren't giants or covered in fur or anything wild like that, but they were blue. Yes, blue. Like the sky or a smurf. Their skin, especially around their lips and fingers, had a bluish tint that made people stare, whisper, or even turn away in fear. These were the Blue Fugates of Troublesome Creek, and their story is as unusual as it sounds. It all started in the early 1800s with a man named Martin Fugate, a French orphan who moved to Kentucky. He married a red-haired woman named Elizabeth Smith, and together they started a family. What they didn't know was that they both carried a rare genetic mutation. It wasn't dangerous, but it sure made a statement, because it turned their kids blue. Now back then, Troublesome Creek wasn't exactly a social hotspot. The area was super remote, and the nearest neighbor might be miles away. So people married whoever was nearby, often cousins, sometimes even closer. It wasn't seen as strange during that time period. But in the case of the Fugates, this isolation meant that the mysterious blue gene kept showing up again and again in their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. At first, no one knew why they were blue. Some folks thought they were sick, or cursed, or maybe even from another planet. The truth was much simpler and way more scientific. The Fugates had a condition called methemoglobinemia, caused by a mutation in the CYB5R gene. Their blood couldn't carry oxygen the normal way, so their skin turned blue from lack of it, like when your fingers go purple in the cold, but all the time. For generations, their blue skin was just a part of their lives. Some of the Fugates were deeply embarrassed, hiding away from the world. Others didn't mind it and lived their lives like everyone else, farming, working, raising families. But the mystery of their color remained unsolved for over 100 years. Then, in the 1960s, along came Dr. Madison Cohen, a hematologist who heard whispers of the blue people and decided to investigate. When he met the Fugates, he didn't freak out. Instead, he ran blood tests and finally cracked the case. He discovered their condition and treated them with methylene blue, a type of dye that counteracts the disorder. And just like that, their skin color faded, and the Blue Fugates became, well, just the Fugates. Today, the Blue Fugates are remembered not just for their color, but for their unique place in medical history. Their story helped doctors understand a rare condition and showed how isolation and genetics can lead to some truly strange results. Habsburg jaw. Imagine being so obsessed with keeping your royal bloodline pure that you end up marrying your own cousin over and over again. Sounds like a bad idea, right? Well, for the powerful Habsburg family of Europe, it was a way of life. The Habsburgs weren't just any family. They ruled huge parts of Europe, Spain, Austria, the Holy Roman Empire, you name it, they probably had a crown there. But instead of finding love far and wide, they decided to keep things in the family, literally. Why? Power. They believed that marrying each other, cousins, uncles, nieces, would keep their royal blood strong and their kingdoms united. But instead of power, what they got, of course, was a genetic curse, and a very visible one at that, a massive, extended jaw. This condition is called mandibular prognathism, but most people know it as the Habsburg jaw. It made their lower jaw stick out way past the top one, like a bulldog. Their faces became longer, their teeth didn't line up, but it didn't only affect their looks. It caused serious medical issues with talking, eating, and even breathing. Over the generations, this jawline became the unofficial family trait. You could look at a portrait and instantly tell. Yep, definitely a Habsburg. But no one had it worse than King Charles II of Spain. Poor Charles was basically the final boss of inbreeding. He came from 16 generations of cousin marriages. 16. That's like playing a game of family tree Jenga and hoping it doesn't collapse. Charles didn't just inherit the jaw, he got a full set of health problems. He couldn't chew properly, he drooled a lot, and his speech was almost impossible to understand. But it wasn't just physical. His brain didn't develop normally either. He was constantly sick, couldn't have children, and struggled with basic tasks. People whispered that he was cursed, but really, he was just a heartbreaking example of what happens when you gamble with genetics too many times. Scientists later compared the Habsburgs to the general population and found something shocking. While only 2 to 4% of regular folks have this jaw condition, nearly every single Habsburg portrait showed signs of it. That's not a coincidence. That's centuries of inbreeding doing its work. Eventually, the Habsburg dynasty fell, and the jawline disappeared with them. But their legacy lives on in paintings, history books, and as a giant caution sign saying, maybe don't marry your cousin. So, next time you hear about royal families in fairy tales, just remember the Habsburgs. They had palaces, power, and plenty of gold, but they also had one jaw-dropping problem they couldn't hide. King Tut's disease. We've all heard of King Tut, the golden boy of ancient Egypt. He was young, rich, royal, and, oh yeah, dead by 18. When his tomb was discovered in 1922, it was packed with glittering treasures. But what his shiny gold masks didn't show was just how broken his body really was. Tutankhamun became pharaoh when he was just 9 years old. That's right. While most kids were learning to ride a bike, he was ruling a kingdom. But behind the crown and the glory, King Tut was fighting a much more painful battle, one inside his own body. When scientists scanned his mummy using CT scans and DNA tests, what they found was shocking. Tut had a clubbed foot, His neck bones were fused together, and he probably needed a cane just to walk. He wasn't the strong, godlike ruler the statues showed. He was a fragile teenager, struggling just to stand. And here's the kicker. His health problems weren't random. It might surprise you, but you guessed it, they were inherited. Tut's family was obsessed with keeping their bloodline pure. So, like the lovely Habsburgs, they kept it all in the family. His parents were brother and sister. Yeah, awkward. And dangerous. This kind of inbreeding is like building a house out of the same weak bricks over and over. Sooner or later, things start falling apart. And with Tut, they literally did. Along with his birth defects, he also had malaria, which was the final blow. A sickly body, fragile bones, a deadly infection. He never stood a chance. Tut's family tree wasn't really a tree at all. It was more like a pyramid, just like the ones outside his tomb. The same names kept popping up again and again, stacked on top of each other. That kind of repetition boosts the chance of rare genetic problems, and Tut's body was proof of it. So while people remember King Tut for his golden tomb and ancient curses, the real curse was his own DNA, a royal life trapped in a broken body, all because his family wouldn't marry outside the palace walls. A legend? Absolutely. But also a lesson. Some things, like good health, are more valuable than all the gold in the world. Neonatal diabetes. In some families, secrets run deep, but in others, the danger runs in the blood. What if a baby is born? Tiny, delicate, innocent, but within just a few weeks, something's not right. The baby isn't gaining weight. Their bones feel too soft. They struggle to move. Doctors run tests, and suddenly, the parents hear a word they've never heard before. Wolcott-Rallison syndrome. It sounds like a villain from a movie, but it's very real. It's a super rare form of neonatal diabetes, and it's not caused by sugar or diet. It's genetic, built into the baby from the very beginning. What causes it? A glitch in a gene called EIF-2AK3. Basically, one of the body's stress managers. When this gene is faulty, the cells can't handle stress, especially in important places like the pancreas, liver, and bones. The baby ends up with permanent diabetes, weak bones, liver problems, and serious delays in development. And here's the heartbreaking part. This syndrome shows up most often in children born to closely related parents. In fact, 25% of all known WRS cases come from consanguineous marriages. That's a fancy word for when cousins, uncles, or other close relatives have children together. Families may think they're keeping traditions or bloodlines strong, but what they don't realize is that they're doubling the risk of passing on hidden, harmful mutation. It's like rolling genetic dice with only bad numbers. Wolcott-Rallison doesn't give second chances. Most children with it don't make it to adulthood. It's silent, rare, and often strikes in places with high rates of inbreeding, places where no one talks about family genetics until it's too late. Huntington's disease. There's a small village on the coast of Venezuela called Barranquitas. At first glance, it looks like any other quiet seaside town, with fishing boats, kids playing, and families chatting under the sun. But behind the smiles and laughter, there's a dark secret that has haunted this place for generations. It all started 200 years ago, with one woman. No one knows her name anymore, but she carried something deep in her DNA, a hidden mutation. She didn't know it. Her children didn't know it. But slowly, generation by generation, something terrifying began to happen. People started to get sick, not with a cold or a fever, but with something much stranger. In their 30s or 40s, they'd begin to twitch. Their hands would shake. They'd trip over nothing. At first, it looked like clumsiness until it got worse. They forgot names, lost control of their emotions, and began to lash out. Some would laugh for no reason. Others would cry and not know why. Then came the memory loss, the mood swings, and finally, the silence, when their minds and bodies simply stopped working. Doctors would later call it Huntington's disease. Huntington's is rare. Only about 3 out of every 100,000 people in the world have it. But in this one village, it spread like wildfire. That one woman's mutation got passed down through the generations, hidden like a ticking time bomb. Today, more people in Barranquitas carry the Huntington's gene than anywhere else on Earth. And the cruel part is that if just one parent has the faulty gene, there's a 50-50 chance their child will get it too. A coin toss. And there's no cure. Once the symptoms start, it only gets worse. People lose control over their bodies, their minds, and their lives. Life expectancy after symptoms show is around 10 to 30 years. Families here live in fear, watching their loved ones change before their eyes. Children grow up wondering if they'll be next. Every twitch, every stumble feels like a warning sign. And yet, in the middle of all this darkness, the village has shown something incredible: resilience. They've become one of the world's largest sources of research for Huntington's. Scientists from all over come to study the village, hoping to find a cure, not just for Barranquitas, but for the world. If you liked this video, subscribe for similar ones or leave a comment to suggest another.